It's Joe Hill here, doing a Facebook Live for Premier Collectibles. So it's like a live signing. So it's like we can't do bookstore appearances and so on because there's a plague on. But I am here through the beauty of our digital connection. To entertain you for an hour and to sign some books in front of you. And all I can say is if watching someone signing books is your idea of entertainment, boy, did you come to the right place. This is the book I'm signing. I'm go ahead and going to scribble on a couple hundred copies of Full Throttle here and answer some questions. And I think that you can go to premiercollectibles.com/fullthrottle if you want to pick up a copy of one of these books. They've got them for you. So anyway, I will. So it'll be sort of like I guess I'll sort of figure this out as we go along. I'll like scribble on a couple books, answer a couple questions, and we'll try to have some fun. You guys are good to hang out with me. Hello. Ryan Christopher, Jessica, Miranda Elliott, Chad, Sierra, Raina, Debbie, thanks for coming. I'm sort of watching people scroll in. Pretty cool. Okay. All right. I'll sign a book. Let's see. I don't always doodle on them. Sometimes I do. You've seen the before. There's the after. Oop. That's a Nessie. All right. Okay. Megan from Brampton, Ontario says, not a question, but I just finished The Fireman and I loved it. Megan, thank you. You're too kind. This is the last one to complete my collection because Megan's bought all the other books. Thanks for the quarantine entertainment. That's very kind. We got to take our pleasures where we can get them. A lot of us are sort of bottled up at home. I think everyone has had at least one day when they felt really colossally depressed and overwhelmed by everything that's gone. And it's nice. It's going to help a little. I know they help me. I've kept turning the pages and it's kept my spirits up a little bit. So, all right. Time for it. The stories in Full Throttle were written over a course of almost 15 years. And when I was pulling the collection together, it was interesting to look at them and see how I changed as a writer. A lot of the early stories to me seem pretty densely written, and every sentence is a kind of feel like I've slavishly worked over. I just think in 2006, 2007, when I was writing the earliest of the stories in Full Throttle, thumbprint and stuff, I was so insecure, so worried I had a bad sentence and everyone would figure I was a fraud. So, okay, so anyway, a question. Tom in Delaware, do you plan on writing more stories in the Hill House line? So far, I have them all and enjoy the writers as well. Wow, Tom, thank you. So the Hill House comic book line is being published through DC, and it is a collection of horror comics by different writers. I'm writing two of them plus the secret backup story. And the idea was to kind of do like, I kind of wanted to do something like what Blumhouse Studios has done for film. Blumhouse has just churned out, every year it seems like they churn out another 2 or 3 really intelligent, really scary, really well-made horror film, whether it's stuff like Conjuring or Get Out, or Oculus. You know, they do what they do so well. It's been a great period for horror, and I thought it would be terrific to have you know, a line of comic books that was like Blumhouse. The other thing is like when I grew up in the '80s, you know, when I was a kid, I loved to go to a mom and pop video store and head to the horror section and look through the straight video shockers. And I watched a lot of terrible pictures, but every once in a while you discover something, you know, like Reanimator, that was so screwed up, you know, so messed up and so subversive and so funny and so scary. And so I've kind of wanted Hill House Line almost be like, here's a kind of videos that you might find in some mom and pop video store of the mind, and they're sitting back there in the horror section, and they're like, you know, the weird straight to video horror films you didn't know you needed. So anyway, there's Basket Full of Heads and Plunge, which are two that I'm writing. Basket Full of Heads illustrated by Leo Max, and Plunge is illustrated by comic book legend Stuart Immonen. They're both colored by Dave Stewart, and Darren Bennett's doing the lettering, and I've had a hell of a lot of fun with them. Carmen Maria Machado, National Book Award nominated writer, is doing some of the best comic book writing of the year in her title, The Low Woods, which is almost like a smash up of like David Cronenberg and David Lynch. You know, the whole thing is set in a town that's kind of like Twin Peaks. It's called Shudder to Think, Pennsylvania, and it's full of unique eccentrics, and it's a real interesting forgotten corner Americana. But the comic is also full of this sense of body horror, like the early Cronenberg films. There are these guys out in the woods, the skinless men, and there's also these mutated deer that can stand upright in their back legs and have arms like women, and it's possible the whole town is built over River Leth, and that's a great one. M.R. Carey, were Peter Gross and Vince Locke. M.R. Carey is the mastermind behind a great run on Lucifer for DC, and he's the author of The Girl with All the Gifts. He did a story for us called The Dollhouse Family, which is very chilly British horror, and also is kind of a throwback to those very first Vertigo titles. And then Laura Marks and gross out horror comics and Kelly Jones are doing one called Daphne Byrne, which I've been describing as a feminist on the Omen gaslight, set in the late 19th century in New York. So those are the opening titles. None of that answers Tom's question about whether there's going to be more Hill House titles. But stay tuned. You know, we might have something on that front soon enough. I got to sign a few more books. Let's see. Deborah says COVID is running amok in New Jersey. Josh says Full Throttle was awesome. Thank you. Mariah asks, how do you get a signed copy? You can get a signed copy of Full Throttle by going to the premiercollectibles.com/Full Throttle website. They will hook you up. Hi, Squirrely Girl from Jersey. Oh, hey! Sierra Reed says hi, and she has a Wraith tattoo on her arm. That's so awesome. The Wraith, of course, is the sinister Rolls-Royce driven by Charlie Manx, who is a kind of soul vampire. He's the big bad guy in my third novel, Nosferatu, S4A2. That's Sanity license plate, and if you sound it out, it spells the German word for vampire, which proves that Charlie does actually have a pretty good sense of humor. Zachary Quinto plays Charlie Manx in the AMC TV series, which had its first season last year and is going to have its second season this summer. And between you and me, I just finished watching the rough cuts of the second season, and it's awesome. It runs so hard. It's, you know, I love her season, but in some ways I think the second season is this big leap. It's so relentless. It's so sort of unforgiving and really scary. I can't wait for AMC to let people at it this summer. Okay, all right, I'm gonna sign some books. Going. Sign. It'll be cool when a lot of the brick and mortar stores can open back up, and we can do book tours again. I have this idea. I can't do it right now. We'll see how long COVID drags on. I had this idea to start writing a story and then reading it on video to like read the internet a bedtime story. I thought that would be such a cool thing to do. It'd be great, and I wonder if I could pull it off. Write a couple pages every day and read it at the end of the day. But I don't know. I don't know if it's such a good idea to go live with rough stuff, and I got a lot of projects going on, and idea. Anyway, Hector says, give UP drivers a shout. Hey guys, thanks for doing what you're doing. I know it's a little scary out there, and all I can say is stay healthy and take care of yourselves. UPS, we love you. Shauna says, postal delivery folks, FedEx, love you guys. Shauna says, Nosferatu gave her night. I'm so glad to hear it. That makes me very happy. Chris from Bethlehem, Pennsylvania says, do you believe in ghosts? That's a really interesting question, because the one time I maybe saw a ghost was in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. And I'm not making this up. This guy really is from Bethlehem, and that really is where I had my one potentially supernatural experience. So here's what happened. So it was 2010. And there was Fox filmed a pilot of Lock and Key that never got on the air. So Lock and Key is now a hit series on Netflix. It's really exciting, but it took us a long time to get there. There were 2 other pilots before Netflix finally made the series that got on air. And so we shot a version in Pittsburgh for Fox in 2010. And I was there for a couple of days, and then I started to drive home to New Hampshire. And I had this idea that I could drive in one day from Pittsburgh to coastal New Hampshire. And I drove, and I never even got out of Pennsylvania. I think I got geography right on this. And I suddenly realized I wasn't going to be able to make the trip home in one day. And so I started looking around for a hotel where I could stay. And online, I found out that there was this great 18th century hotel in Bethlehem. It had been there unchanged, and it was supposed to be famously haunted. And for a little extra money, you could get a room with a boo. And saw this, and I thought, oh my God, I gotta stay there. So and I'm like calling up my family, I'm calling up my parents, and I'm like, so what happens if I get the room with a boo? And then they find me the next morning, and my hair is white, and I've died screaming. Are they going to run my credit card? So, I'm having a good chuckle about it. I called them up, and they said the room with the boo was not available, but the room right beneath it was, and that one was supposed to be haunted too. And I kind of had my doubts, but, it kind of felt like maybe they just wanted me to get a room. I said, okay, and I got a room, and it was a lovely hotel, and when I looked out my window, you could corner the street below, and it was like looking back into the 18th century, cobblestone and gas lights, and these little Dickensian shops, and I had a lovely meal, and I thought, this is great, and I went to bed, and I woke up at 1 in the morning, and there was a woman standing at the foot of the bed, and I couldn't move. I couldn't look at her. I just felt she was there. And I was seized, gripped with a withering sense of fear. It was like being impaled. And I couldn't lift my head to look at her, and I didn't want to see her. And I screamed at the top of my lungs, "Go away!" And at that moment in the room above me, the room with a bow, I heard two people scream and a huge crash as they fell out of bed. And they got their money's worth. They were screamed awake in the middle of the night. I eventually was able to move and turn on the light. There was, of course, no one at the foot of my bed. I searched all around. I turned on all the lights. I looked under the bed. I looked in the closet. I looked in the bathroom. Natural girl. No haunting puddles of blood. And so there are one of two possibilities. Either I had, there was a thing. What's the thing where you can't move? There's a sleep thing. Sleep paralysis. Thank you. That's my 20-year-old. There is a sleep paralysis thing where your head is still sort of half in a dream, but you're open and you're awake and you can't move. The power has not come back to your body. So either I had a case of sleep paralysis, or there was a 100-year-old ghost at the foot of the bed staring at me with cold, empty eyes. And it's up to you. I don't know which it was. I leave that one for you to decide. And Tiffany says I should come to Texas. Well, when it's safe. We were down in Austin to premiere Nosferatu last year. And, I hope to get back in. Always love it down there. Mark Purple says, Lock and Key is amazing. Thank you. You're very kind. Let's see. Tina says, I love your work. Thank you, Tina. You're kind. Jessica, I agree. Heart-Shaped Box would make a great film. Warner Brothers has had the rights to Heart-Shaped Box for almost since it came out. I think actually before it was published. Different writers and directors have been attached at different times. And every once in a while it seems to come back to life for a little while and then sort of drift away. So I don't know if we'll ever have a Heart-Shaped Box film or not. So far, I've managed to sign about 7 books. If the reason you tuned in was to hear me yabber away, then you're getting exactly what you hope for. But if you really just want to see me silently sign books, I apologize. I know so far it's been a massive disappointment. I'm going to try to do better. I used to doodle, and I used to. I had very distinct doodles for each. I have a Nessie that I do for Full Throttle sometimes because one of the stories has a lake monster in it. But to tell the truth, I don't do the doodles as much as I used to. Yeah, so the lake monster story is called By the Silver Waters of Lake Champlain. It's one of the 13 stories in Full Throttle. Actually, there's 14 stories. One of them is hidden. By the Silver Waters of Lake Champlain is about some kids in the early 20th century who find a washed-up plesiosaur on the beaches of Lake Champlain, and then talk about how this discovery is going to change their lives and provide them with fortune. And it's a little bit of a on Ray Bradbury's famous short story, The Foghorn, about a sea creature that falls in love with a lighthouse. I always love that story. I also have a lifelong fascination with the Loch Monster. And when I say lifelong, I mean literally my first memories from childhood are my parents were driving to Loch Ness. Those are my earliest memories. My parents became expats, so for about 6 months they fled America. It was in the late 1970s. Ford, Hardin, Nixon. My parents were old hippies, and they basically said, screw the history. And I think my dad had sort of romantic ideas about being an ex-writer, you know, going to Europe and sitting outside in phase, drinking coffee and, you know, talking existentialism or something. I don't know. But anyway, they wound up in London and were there for 6 months. And I had this absolute fixation on Loch Ness. And so one day, my mom took all 3 of us kids on the trains from London to Edinburgh. Peter Straub lived in London at that time, and my dad actually stayed behind in London to collaborate with Peter, to work on the first great collaboration, which was drinking a case of beer together. Like their other collaborations, I heard it went very well. Kathy says, what is your favorite story and/or character you've written? Oh, and love your glasses. Thank you. My favorite characters that I've ever written about are probably Harper and John from my 4th novel, The Fireman. They were just really great company, you know, and that's a pathogen story. So I've been kind of like, you know, I wrote a big long novel about society breaking down in the face of a pandemic, and society not quite breaking down, showing that in fact society is much more resilient than we generally think. And I've been kind of hesitant, like it's not like I don't want to be out social media like banging the drum for firemen off the back of a pandemic that is a real crisis affecting real lives, and you know, so you don't want to be like, I don't want to, you know, but I did sort of write about something a little bit like we're living through, only on a much grander, scarier, you know, frightening scale. Because this is going to be out okay. Because the COVID-19, you know, we're hanging together, and it's scary, and it's stressful, but I think we're going to get through it. Whereas the fireman is like about a plague of spontaneous combustion, and most of the world burns up. But in any event, at the center of it were these 2 people, Harper and John, who become close companions and really care about each other. It just, you know, in the face of stress and fear, again and again, they come back to help other people with, you know, a sense of resilience and wit. I loved the way they were always verbally fencing with each other, and I loved that for them it was never a question, that they were willing to make sacrifices, personal sacrifices, to look after others, to look after people who couldn't look after themselves. You know, and a lot of times I write heroes and characters who were morally more troubling. But John and Harper are really unambiguous heroes, and so I loved writing about them. I mean, as far as what's my favorite story that I've written, I like them all pretty much equally. They all kind of have, you know, my stink on them. So I guess, you know, and you know, to make a highly literary analogy, you know, a dog loves his own farts. So yeah, I mean, you know, I kind of like them all. I like the way all my books smell. I don't know if I took this in the right direction there, but anyway, I guess the one that I'm proudest of in some ways is the second novel, Horns, because that was the hardest to write. That was the one that I thought you know, I might not be able to pull this off, but you know, it did get written, and I'm really proud of the way it came out. Okay. Marissa says, could you wish my boyfriend Jeff Burns a happy birthday during the quarantine? You bet. Jeff, happy birthday. Hang in there, man. I'll sign 3 books next to some more stuff. Oh, wow. We've gone over, haven't we? I'm going to hang out for a little while longer. I think this was supposed to be an hour long, but... Okay, all right, good. Oh, okay, all right. Yeah, I'm gonna hang around for a while. Oh, right, I know. I was thinking, boy, this is really flying by. We started at 6. We actually started at 6:30. And let's see. Savannah says horns is her favorite. Thank you, Savannah. Melissa, do you ever think you'll come out to Australia to talk? Yes, absolutely. Want to very much. When I make an Australia swing, I'll probably try Japan and New Zealand as well, because that part of the world, and I've never been there. But for that, I'd really need to break off 3 months. I mean, I really feel like I'd have to, be able to take enough time so that when down there I can do some work and do some conferences, hit some bookstores, but also enjoy and see a whole quadrant of the planet that I've never visited before. I think that would be great. Tina in Las Vegas asked, do you ever dream about your characters? I dreamt about the situations once or twice. I don't think I've ever dreamt about the characters. That's interesting. I mean, I've definitely once or twice I've been in, I had fire dreams once or twice when I was dreaming, when I was working on The Fireman. But I don't think I ever dreamt about, it would be really interesting to meet my characters in a dream. Anna says, some very kind things about Full Throttle. Thank you. Which character, Rebecca says, which character do you think you've written that is the least related to your personal experiences, but you feel most fond of and connected to? That's a good question. I love writing about Judas Coyne, who is the star of the lead character in the first book, Heart-Shaped Box, my first novel. Jude is a 60-something heavy metal musician. Had it all. He's played arenas. He's had platinum albums. He had a ton of videos on MTV, but when we meet him at the beginning of the book, he's on the downslope of his career, and he's hanging out almost all by himself in his farmhouse in upstate New York. And like most people who are lonely, bored, and angry, he's spending a lot of time buying stuff he doesn't need online. And he's buying stuff to pad out his collection of macabre artifacts. So he's got a tree pan skull. He's got a witch's confession from the 8th century. He's got a real snuff film. He has about a woman selling a ghost online. And he decides to buy it. And if you've ever seen a single horror film, this is an awfully bad idea. But that's the plot of the story. And I loved writing about Jude. I'm not a rock star. I can't even pick out a single tune on the guitar. Jude is angry and hard and tough, and I think I'm probably not the world's angriest guy. That I'm pretty happy, and I'm nobody's idea of a tough guy. But he was fun to write. I don't think a lot of my lead characters have much in common with me. I know some writers do that. A lot of the fiction is kind of, has an autobiographical basis. But I've always tried to project myself into lives and experiences that are different from my own, because I kind of think that's where the fun is. That's where the exercise is. The exercise in reading fiction and in writing it, to imagine yourself into someone else's experience. Heidi says, which book did you most enjoy writing? She's from Maryland. I always have fun. Probably the most fun I ever had writing anything was working on Lock and Key, which was the long-running comic that I did with my soul brother, Gabriel Rodriguez, and my editor, Chris Ryle, is best man at my wedding, and Jay Photos, one of the best color in the business, and Robbins did all the lettering, and we're still telling Lock and Key stories. It's still a blast. But Lock and Key, of course, is the story of a ancient New England mansion full of invincible keys. Every key turns a different lock, opens a different door, and activates a different supernatural power. So there's one key that can turn you into a ghost, There's a key that can swap genders. So if you're a boy, you can turn into a girl, and if you're a girl, you can turn into a boy. There's a key that can take you anywhere. So if you can just imagine the door you want to walk through, you can stick it in the door and turn it, and, you know, open a door in Massachusetts and come through in London. And you know, I say it's been adapted for TV. Carlton Cuse and Meredith Averill were the co-showrunners on Netflix's tremendous and very exciting adaptation, and came out well, and people seem to like it. So I'm terrifically excited, and I was glad to be a part of it. Yeah. Gail wants to know, Gail from Angola, New York, wants to know if I have more books in the works. You bet. I came down from working on one, came downstairs from working on one right before we started this live chat. Let's hope it ends out. Paul says, have you considered writing a nonfiction book or memoir? You know, yeah, sure, absolutely. The closest thing I've ever done to a memoir is the introduction in Full Throttle, where I talked about growing up in Bangor, Maine, as the child of two great American writers. And I talked a little bit about that week when Tom Savini was my babysitter. Tom Savini is the Grand Master of gross out special effects, makeup effects. He did the gross out effects in Dawn of the Dead and Creepshow and Friday the 13th. And also makes an appearance in Lock and Key. If you keep your eyes peeled. And there is a club. Scott Cavendish has a club named after him, the Savini Squad. So he's sort of a touch point in my life. Todd, thank you. I'm glad you liked Jude. Thought he was a cool character. Let's see. Dave Peterson. Oh, man. Hey, hanging out on this Facebook live chat is Dave Peterson, who is the incredible writer and artist of Mouse Guard. He did a couple of covers for Lock and Key, and unbelievable guy, unbelievable talent. If you haven't had a chance to check out Mouse Guard, by all means, do. You're missing out on a great read, you know. And I think look for Dave on Instagram and Twitter, because you think he's doing a lot of, you know, a lot of drawing by request. I hope I'm not going to get him in trouble. I hope he's doing this because, you know, but I think he's doing some commissions and stuff right now, and it's, you know, and at time right now, coronavirus is hitting the independent comic stores real hard, and a lot of writers and artists, mostly a lot of artists especially, make a great deal of their income from convention appearances where they can do paid commitments. So the conventions are a big deal for them, and this whole income source has been out. And the local comic stores are just absolutely getting clobbered because they have foot, you know, a lot of the foot traffic is shut down because of the coronavirus fears. And this is the part where I'm supposed to come out with some inspiring about here's what you can do to support. I don't really know. I do think if you have a local comic store, contact them about, you know, what can you do up local issues while protecting your health and their health, and, you know, practicing good social distancing. You know, and if there's an art you love or a few artists you love, by all means look them up online, see what they're doing. Maybe they have a Patreon you can give a couple bucks to. I mean, you know, if you can find a way to help and you have the ability, you know, this is a moment when the comics industry needs its fans to step up and do whatever little bit they can to help. I don't know what that might be, you know, but thank you. Thank you if you can do something to help an artist, or, you know, help your local comic book company, you know, keep their doors open for another week. Your generosity and thoughtfulness is much appreciated. A lot of your local independent bookstores a lot of your local independent bookstores are also doing curbside delivery and store pickup if you can. And some bookstores are even allowing small groups to browse in store. So if you get a chance, reach out to your local bookstore, go independent, see what you can do for them. I just want to remind you guys, the book we're signing tonight is Full Throttle. If you'd like a copy of it, do go to premiercollectibles.com/Full Throttle. And that was a really dramatic backslash, probably. That was like a Jim Cramer buy stocks thing. Go to premiercollectibles.com and you can pick a copy and, nose around while you're there, because they're offering a lot of other signed goodies and helping to support a lot of other writers right now. So do check them out. And thanks for tuning in. This is cool. I hope it's. Let's see. Kathy, Savini squad all the way. I'm with you. I'm a founding member. Klaus, I'm glad you liked the introduction. Thank you. Luis, hi. How are you? Oh, Lisa, thanks. I'm glad you like my. Do try to approach my female characters with as much imagination and freshness as I can, and try not to too badly. Hey Jillian. Hey Joe. I think I need this unlocked if I'm going to look at more questions. I didn't go to sleep. No. Yes. No. Come here. This is my wife Jillian, who made all this. And she's the best, and she set all this up for me because I'm not very technical, and she's amazing. She's the best. Okay. Tim from Smithville, Mississippi says, "Do you ever scare yourself when writing and stop to think, what was that noise you just heard?" Actually, once or twice. It is. Sometimes when you're writing scary stuff, mostly not. Every once in a while, when you're really in the scene. And you're alone in the house and it's night and a bunch of snow slides on for something. Yeah, I definitely, half pissed myself. Sure. Fear sharded down that leg more than once. Let's see. Nick, thank you. Mandarin says, "Boars there in Cincinnati are offering curbside delivery. That's awesome. Go to Cincinnati. If you're in Cincinnati, support your local bookstore and see what you can do to a tough time, okay? Tell them I sent you." Oh, hey. Sounds like Mouse Guard, Volume 1 of Mouse Guard might be on Kindle Unlimited. So if you're a Kindle person, check it out. Jonathan says, "Have you ever met a Joe Hill that you didn't like?" So here's a funny thing, right? So my parents are hippies, unrepentant hippies to this day. And they came along, they fell in love in the 60s, and the folk rock of the 1960s was the soundtrack, provided the soundtrack for their courtship. And when they had me, real pro-union people, so am I. When they had me, they named me Joe Hill King, after the labor leader Joe Hill, who was executed in Salt Lake City in the 1930s. He was executed for a murder, for a grocery store robbery in which several people were killed. But generally, it was believed that he was actually executed for his union activities, for trying to organize. And there's this beautiful song about him, and Joan Baez did a terrific version of it, which I talk about actually in Full Throttle. So here's the interesting coda to that story, though. Okay, so in my family, audiobooks are a big deal. We all listen to audiobooks, and sometimes we record audiobooks for each other. We haven't done it in a long time, but it used to be that we would play hearts, and we would have a deal where whoever lost, a long game of hearts would have to read something on audio whoever won the game. And once, my dad lost to me. And so he wound up reading on audio Joe Hill by Wallace Stenger, work of fiction, but sort of a non-fiction-y work of fiction because it tried to closely account for Joe Hill's life, to be true to the facts of his life. And after listening to the book, I concluded, like Wallace Stenger, that in fact Joe probably did commit the murders that he was executed for, which does make it a little strange that that's my professional name. But on the other hand, you know, the world is full of dudes named Ted Bundy who, you know, work as plumbers or whatever, and so I'm at peace with it. And besides, before he killed a bunch of people, Joe Hill did a lot of great union organization and a lot of great union organizing, and wrote a terrific song called "Come Josephine in My Flying Machine." He was a terrifically talented songwriter. Wrote an American classic. So, yeah, well, take that for good. Romina, hi from Argentina. It's great to hear from you. Thanks for tuning in. Lisa wants to know, what Neil Gaiman book should I start to read first? I mean, is there really a wrong place to start? You know, is there a bad place to start with Neil Gaiman? They're all very welcoming. Clever and witty and very calmly written, if that's a thing. I think if I was, you know, just gonna, I mean, without knowing anything about you, if I was just gonna pick, you know, say, start here, I would say The Ocean at the End of the Lane, because it can be read in a single weekend, maybe even in just one or two sittings, and is sort of an example of Neil condensed to his purest element, to his purest essence. So, yeah, that's where I'd start with him. I have to occasionally tune into the signing just a little bit, because if I'm not careful, the quality of the O's in my name go downhill. Jamie, hey. Thanks for tuning in. Hello, New York City. Kim, thanks for picking a copy of Full Throttle. I hope you enjoy it when you're around reading it. Emily, thanks for the kind words about Late Returns, a story in Full Throttle. Jessica in Plainfield, Illinois wants to know, what's one of the most important things to know as an aspiring writer? Probably one of the most important things to know is that no single day of work matters so much. The only thing that really matters is that you work a little bit every day, even if it's just to write 100 words. You know, when you work on a novel, it can take 3 years to write a novel, and when it's over, you can't remember, you can't look at the book and say, oh, I wrote that on a bad day. I wrote this on it. I was really hot the day I wrote this. It all just kind of blurs together. The other thing I'd say is never sit down to write a short story. Never sit down to write a novel. You know, those jobs are too big. That's too hard. You're asking too much of yourself. Just sit down to write a good scene. That's all. And a short story is really just 1 to 3 very good scenes stacked in a small pile. And a novel is 20 or 30 good scenes all stacked together. That's the job. Just try to write a good scene. August in Marble Hill, Missouri wants to know if I have a preference for writing book or comics. Well, I was a comic book writer before I was a novelist. It's the form that I feel most confident in. And when I work in comics, you know, when I work with someone like Gabe or Leo Max or Stewart or C.P. Wilson III, who did my comic Wraith, Traded my comic wraith. You know, I work with any the amazing collaborators I've had a chance to work with. You know, it's the closest as a writer I'll ever feel to what it's like to be banned, because you know, writing is pretty lonely, isolating work. You sit in a room and you listen to the voices in your head and you make stuff all day. And when you work on a comic, you know, I turn the script and then I start getting pages from Gabe. And the stuff that he's drawn, you know, the stuff that he's drawn is everything I hope for and then some. And it gets me all excited, you know, and then you start to see, you know, the pages getting colored and they come to emotional life and it all charges you up. So then when you write the next script, you know, you want to do even better to see those pictures. And so it creates a virtuous loop. Everyone's feeding off each other's energy. I love that feeling, and so I guess I'd have to say that I slightly prefer writing comic books, but I love writing novels too, and in part I love writing novels. I love writing comic books because they're easy. I love writing novels because they're hard. Brian from Akron, Ohio wants to know if we're getting more Lock and Key. You bet. I assume he's talking about comic. We have several, a forthcoming story coming out in a short time called Lock and Key of In Pale Battalions Go, which is set during World War I, and that will segue into a crossover with Neil Gaiman universe, which I think Lock and Key and Sand should go together like peanut butter and chocolate. So that's happening. In terms of the TV series, you know, as soon as we have something announced, it'll be all over the internet. Jane Petite wants to know how long it takes to write a novel. Me to write a novel. The answer is 3 years, but also 9 months. And both those answers are true. I said earlier that when you write, don't focus too much on any one day. There are good days and there are bad days, and it all comes out in the wash. And later you can't remember what you wrote on the good days and what you wrote on the bad days. That said, I do think that the meat of each novel I've ever written has been written in between 6 to 9 months, when it seemed like the creative faucets were all the way open. Then all the other work around it, rewriting, revisions, fixing things, thinking things, that was another 2 years and 3 months, but yeah. But basically 9 months. My dad is of course, you know, most people know now that my dad is the novelist Stephen King. And it takes me 9 months to write a book. My dad, he like sneezes. Oh, look, it's a new novel. Victoria, hey, hello, Methuen. What am I reading right now? Reading a book which hasn't been published yet, about a bunch of untimely deaths at a girls' school at the turn of the century, and it's really funny. It's a really good book. It's like Edward Gorey had written a novel. So yeah, that's cool. The next thing I read will probably be Sing by, who is it? Allie Smith, right? Allie Smith. I'm 47, but my brain is going on 97. I loved the first 2 books in the series, and I'm excited to get to the next one. I think she's finishing up. I think the last one is out, should be out this year. Rena, hello, Italy, and I hope you're doing okay there. I know it's been the artist Leo Max, who works on Basket Heads, my first Hill House title, is in Italy, and I know life is turned upside down there, and it's tremendously tough. And all I can say is, Ian, and our thoughts are with you. Liz says, would you write a story with Neil Gaiman? I think Neil's got to go out of his own world to occupy him. But I get to do the next best thing, which is I get to play with all his toys in the Sandman universe when I do the Long Key crossover. So, and also I had a chance to write for Neil. He hosted an anthology, co-edited an anthology called Stories. And I did a short story for him called The Devil on the Staircase, which is set in Italy, as it happened, at the turn of the century, and appears in Full Throttle, book that I'm signing tonight, and is an interesting story in that it's written in staircases. Let's see, how's it begin? It begins, I was born in Sulskal, child of a common bricklayer. The village of my birth nestled in the highest, sharpest ridges, high above Positano, and in the cold spring the clouds crawled along the streets like a procession of ghosts. Here in Full Throttle, I'm doing signed copies tonight for premiercollectibles.com. /Full Throttle. So visit their website to pick up a signed book if you want one. Jillian. Yeah, I locked myself out. I got the questions on an iPad, but it's Jillian's iPad, and I'm locked out. Oh, okay. Here we go. Jason in West Trenton, New Jersey says, Joe, I loved the introduction to Full Throttle. Who is your favorite bad guy from Bring On the Bad Guys, and why? Bring On the Bad Guys is sort of my gateway drug to comics. It was a big, thick, graphic novel collection that my dad got for me when I was about 8, something like that. And it's unlike most of the Marvel collections back then. This one didn't focus on the heroes. It focused on the deranged psychopaths who try to take the heroes down. So guys like the Red Skull, the Abomination, the Dread Dormammu, the Green Goblin, and see, I'm more of a, well, favorite bad guy. I guess I like the Green Goblin, because I was like a big Spider-Man reader. And I like that he would kill with a big smile. He's kind of like Marvel's answer to the Joker. I think these Facebook Lives are later recorded and kept. And so that burp that I just unleashed under my breath will live in infamy on the internet. Isn't that nice? Let's see. V, thank you. You're very kind. Beverly, hi. Thank you. Thanks for tuning in. Vanessa, hi. Thank you. Thanks for jumping on. Ramin wants to know, Ramin, I already answered one of your questions, but she wants to know how it feels to have the coolest dad in the galaxy, and it feels really cool. And he is the coolest dad in the galaxy. Rachel wants to know, have you ever written a story or a video game? I've been asked, but I don't think the games are stories. I know that answer is going to unleash a whole heap of hatred on the internet. But I think when you're playing a game, you're playing a game, and when you're reading a story, you're reading a story. And I don't think that they're quite the same. Not really. I have to. So I'm told that I have 5 minutes left. I might actually go a little bit longer. We'll see. But in the meantime, I'm supposed to do a quick 2-minute round. When I answer, it's 22 questions in 2 minutes, which I guess is a premier collectibles tradition. So I'm going to go for it. Okay, you ready? 1. Where were you born? Bangor, Maine, not Camden, Maine, as it was sometime reported on Wikipedia. I don't know how that untruth got out there. There would be no place to be born in Camden, Maine. The hospital is in Bangor. 2. Who would you want to play? Who would you want to play you in a movie? Well, the two people who kind of look like me aren't really actors. On my cooler days, I look like David Grohl. On my less cool days, I look like Ken Burns. Maybe Ken Burns could play me? I only think he's a little bit older than me now, you know what I'm saying? 3. What was your first job? When I was 8 years old, I was a child actor in Creepshow. I played the little kid named Billy, who gets even with his abusive father using a voodoo doll. I spent a week on the set in 1981, and they didn't have an on-set babysitter. They sent me to the trailer gross-out makeup effects artist Tom Savini, and he looked after me for a solid week, and that is a true fact. 4. What is your biggest fear? My biggest fear is that something bad will happen to one of my kids. That's not very imaginative, but it's true. You worry about them getting hurt or getting in trouble. You worry about something happening, on the internet where suddenly some kid is, says something stupid or does something stupid or is in the wrong place, wrong time. Before you know it, they've gone viral and they're humiliated internationally, and it's just a very different world. So, I like most parents, I spend a lot worrying about the kids. Not to think a story about the great kids. 5. Who makes you laugh the most? It's the same answer as the biggest fear, right? The 3 kids. 3 kids are, it's every night in Hill House is another night in the comedy club. 6. What is the one thing you need to have in your fridge at all times? I don't know about what I need to have in the fridge, but I always have to have Tazo Awake tea in the cupboard. It's the first cup every morning, and I drink other teas over the course of the day, but that's sort of become my go-to for when I'm first up. 7. What is your greatest accomplishment? Probably my greatest accomplishment. The best thing to ever happen to me was I asked Gillian Redfern if she would marry me, and she said yes. So that's my life peak. 8. Who is the most interesting person you met recently? You know what's crazy? My dad won a Lifetime Achievement Award at for what he's done for audiobooks, for his support of audiobooks, and so he won a Lifetime Achievement Audio Award, and I was in New York City to present it for him, and I hung out for a little while next to this guy with this crazy beard named Mo, and only realized like 3 hours later that it was Mo Williams who wrote and illustrated all the pigeon books, and I didn't get him to draw me a pigeon, and I'm such an idiot. I love Mo Williams, and read Don't Let the Pigeon Drive the Bus I don't know how many times to my youngest a few years ago, but so anyway, Mo Williams, I'm just sorry I didn't fanboy all over you. Mike, thank you. Mike Cohen, thank you. Brittany says, I am literally a mini-me of my father. Yeah, it's true. Let's see. Favorite novel. Lisa wants to know what my favorite novel is. I'm going to go back to the 22 questions, but first I'll answer Lisa's question. Favorite novel. I go back and forth. I have different choices, and different days. But you know, some days I think Lonesome Dove, Larry McMurtry. Some days I think The Fixer by Malamud. Some days I think Thousand Autumns of Jacob de Zoet by David Mitchell. Sometimes I think Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince by J.K. Rowling. Sometimes I think Case Histories by Kate Atkinson. So I don't mind. What is your middle name? Ha! You guys already know it. What is my biggest pet peeve? The rapid spread of online misinformation. People who are allergic to honesty, which is a strange thing for a guy who plays make-believe for a living to be irritated about. Yeah. Let's see. What is the last book you read? What is the last book I read? It seems bad that I can't remember, but I know that I read something. Jillian, what was the last book I read? I know I read a couple Ed McBain crime novels. I read the first couple 87th Precinct novels back to back just a little while ago, but I don't think that was the last thing I read. I don't know, I'm blanking. I'll come back to it if I can. 12, what is your favorite hobby? When I finish a big project, I usually build a Lego kit. The most recent was after I finished on Basket Full of Heads, I built the 007 Aston Martin, and all the bits work. You know, the headlights come down and reveal the machine guns, and the ejector seat works. I put a little video of it up on my Instagram. What is your guilty pleasure? Banana splits. Do you have any hidden talents? No. If I have if I have any talent whatsoever, it doesn't stay hidden for long. I'm usually going to spread it all over the internet and show it off at appearances. So no hidden talents. What color is your toothbrush? White and black. What is your secret snack? Oh yeah, bagels. I have probably at least 3 days out of the week I have a bagel where it's half butter and cream cheese, half butter and jelly. That's the go-to. How do you take your coffee? I would take my coffee right to the sink and pour it out and then ask for a cup of tea. What is the last movie you saw in theaters? Well, all the theaters are because the country's having a pandemic. However, I was able to catch The Hunt. The Hunt is, of course, created a lot of controversy before it ever came out. A lot of right-wing TV personalities and the president himself decided the movie was mean to people with right-wing views. They based this opinion, I guess, on a one-sentence description in the trailer or something. Where I have to say, off the mark, or not, the movie is really mean to people with right-wing views. It's also really mean to people with left-wing views. It's utterly hysterical and incredibly bloody, and a really good time and fiercely intelligent. In some ways, it's as intelligent and well-engineered as Rian Johnson's Knives Out. And the film has just had terrifically bad luck because first it got trashed in the press, and then when it finally was released, it was released right at the beginning of COVID-19 breaking out in America. So it hasn't really come break. Fortunately, I think it's on VOD, and you should check it out. It's a lot of fun. What is the last gift you gave? I gave my wife gave my mother a copy of Hilary Mantel, the third in the Wolf Hall series. We were able to get a signed copy that we ordered from Waterstones in the UK, we sent that off to her for her birthday. Maybe Premier Collectibles would do something with Hilary Mantel sometime. I hope they will. She's terrific. What cause is dear to your heart? I think right now the causes that are really dear to me are supporting bookstores and comic stores while they get through, the terrific financial crisis caused by COVID-19. And I don't care about all the frontline healthcare workers who are in the hospitals right now, trying to look after as many people as they can, and risking their own health to do it. I don't know exactly. I don't know exactly what you can do to help out, but I think if we can help, if you can find a way to help or support your healthcare community, that they would appreciate it. Let's see. Nicole, case histories. Lindsay wants to know if I built a Lego TARDIS. You bet. Let's see. James wants to know if any more stories from Full Throttle will be adapted for Creepshow. Creepshow is a horror show on the horror service Shudder. Of course, is a continuation of the series that began as a film in 1982 that I was actually in. They did By the Silver Waters of Lake Champlain. It came out great. Tom Savini directed it. And yeah, I definitely hope that they grab one of my stories for the second season because it's been a lot of fun, seeing it come to life as part of the series. What is number one on your bucket list? I'd like to go to Japan, Australia, and New Zealand for a big Pacific, South Pacific swing, like I was talking about earlier. And so that would be a terrific thing to do. Who knows when we'll all be able to travel again, and I'd have to be able to get away for 3 months, which is, a little tough for a working dad to do, but who knows. And the 22nd question is, where do you want to go that you've never been? I think I just answered that. We're up a little past our time. We've gone a little past our time. I think I'll go a couple more minutes, then I'll wind up. Lindsay wants to know could you write a Doctor Who fandom? Are lame. That's really funny. She might be referring to the time that I submitted some stories to the BBC for Doctor Who, because I fell in love with Doctor Who and I watched it with my kids, and I did pitch some. I asked if I could pitch some stories for the series, and they looked at my submissions and I replied. We've never let an American write Doctor Who, and if we were going to, we wouldn't start with you. So that was my shot at Doctor Who. No, I don't think it's very likely. I'm going to do it. Maybe there are comic books. Maybe one of these days. I don't know. I'm pretty busy. It would be fun though. Alex, hello from Lebanon. I hope you're doing well there. Let's see. Heather says some very kind words about Full Throttle. Heather, I appreciate it. Thank you. Meg wants to know anything too scary for you to read or watch. Yeah, I like scary movies. I'm friends with Christopher Golden, the horror writer Christopher Golden, who wrote the introduction to my first collection, 20th Century Ghosts. And every once in a while, me and Chris check out a horror film together. And you can tell we're both horror writers because every time there's a scare, everyone in the movie theater screams, except for me and Chris, who grab each other and start laughing. Victoria wants me to stop hoarding the hand sanitizer in TV. That would be a help. I don't actually. We're okay for toilet paper here in Hill House, but I tell you what, we got to the supermarket and it's pretty wiped out, and I had a shopping list of things to get, and I got back, and my oldest boy said, "Did you get any of the pita bread?" I said, "No, they didn't have any, and if you think you're disappointed, think about me. I was hoping to use that as toilet paper when we ran out." Love Joe. Kathy wants to know if I watch Joe Bob Briggs. Everyone loves Joe Bob Briggs, of course. Let's see. Lindsay wants to know if I'll get to Canada. Not great. Ivory wants to know what film I'd like to adapted from the short story collection. There's a bunch of stuff in there. Anytime someone makes a film or a TV show out of one of your stories, you know, you got to be grateful and excited. And I always love to see what, you know, in the books, I tell my version of the story, and it's always fun to see what someone else comes up with. So, James says, thanks for answering your question. I'm glad I could. Some man wants to know favorite middle grade graphic novels from a teacher. It's not really an area of expertise for me. You might look up Jill Bosa online on Twitter. She handles the young adult books for Water Books. She's a friend of mine, and she might be able to recommend something because she's probably more into the field. Look for her on Twitter. Off the top of my head, though, I would say Bone series, and I'm embarrassed to admit I'm blanking on the name of the writer artist right now. I said I'm like a 47-year-old man with a 97-year-old brain. But Bone was great. Bone was so funny, has such a big-hearted sense of humor, and I love the lead characters who sort of look like they're like throwback characters to, like, you know, the cartooning style of the 1930s. So that might be worth a look. Hey guys, a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed it, and I hope you've had some fun. I'm going to try to do some more of these video, you know, signings and conversations. Maybe one of these nights I'll come on and do read a short story or something. You know, read a bedtime story. So there will be more future. I think you guys were wonderful to hang out with me tonight. I really enjoyed. I think I ought to wind things down, but take care of yourselves. It's good social distancing. Remember to wash your hands 20 seconds, you know, after being out and about. And look after folks, look after the people you love. Take care of yourselves. We'll do this again soon. Thanks, guys. See you well. And I feel like Donald Trump. Like, I'm still recording. I know. I feel like Donald Trump. I'm like, okay. Be well, guys.